Yeah, and Oklahoma's going to start 2-0 with or without Sharon Moore anyway. So whether he's with Michigan or he's not. Because they had a great spring, we're going to talk about what we feel, what the buzz was like, and how we would grade Oklahoma's spring on the field based on everything that we've heard coming out of spring ball. Coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Jay, we talked portal season on yesterday's show. You thought they had a portal season. I gave them a B+. Still feel like there's a few needs. But as we look to the on-field work that Oklahoma got done this offseason, based on the buzz, based on the reports that we heard out of spring ball, where would you grade, or how would you grade Oklahoma's spring?
I'm going to give Oklahoma spring an A- because the one thing that I heard from this spring that gives me a substantial amount of hope and that I was hoping to hear was the offense had really good days. The defense had really good days. The offense would have a good day for a day or two in a row. Then the defense will come back with a day or two in a row. And it was a lot of alternating, which means that both sides of the ball is actually competent enough to handle the other side. That's huge because last year, it's not what we heard. Last year was not like that. Last year was the defense was dominant. And everybody was like, okay, this defense is similar to the ones we saw back in 2007, 2008. When they were really abusing Sam Bradford. So hopefully our quarterback can be forged in fire and he can come out of it evolved into some great piece of steel and he's a dominant, knight out there. We didn't get that, unfortunately, John. That wasn't what we got from Jackson Arnold, and Michael Hawkins was not yet fully forged yet. So we knew that we needed another year of fire for the guy. Well, when it comes to this time around, it sounds like John Mateer was out there cooking himself. He was out there putting pressure on the defense and turning those pieces of lumps of coal into diamonds. So because of that, John, we got back and forth. That made me feel so much more comfortable about this team in comparison to last year.
Yeah, I think where I feel the most comfortable is that the offensive line seems to have come together so far. Like you've got a starting five and you know who that five is right now. Now, could a guy like a Jake Michael have pushed Troy Everett for a starting job? Yeah. Could Michael Fasusi push Jacob Sexton for that starting left tackle job? Yeah. Could Ryan Foje push Febechi Wiwu? Yeah. But other than that, other than guys being pushed for a job, right now who your starting five is going to be along the offensive line, unless those guys just pass them through summer workouts and fall camp and take jobs. You're not concerned about where the offensive line is. I think from left to right, when it's Sexton and Eddie Pierre-Louis and Troy Everett and Febechi Wiwu and Derek Simmons, that's a really solid starting five. And if that's your five and they stay healthy through fall camp and you go into the season with that group's had 9 months to work together to get ready for the start of the season. And then again, if you have a guy go take a job, then you're just better off for it because somebody went and earned it. It wasn't injuries making the way for someone to get an opportunity like it was last year. So I think to me, that's the most encouraging aspect so far is that relatively along the offensive line, you've been really healthy. You haven't heard of any major setbacks or any big injuries that have occurred to your depth. You've had guys that were, held out because they had off-season procedures that were keeping them limited and they're rehabbing and doing all that stuff through spring ball and they're going to be ready for fall camp. But you didn't have anybody blow an ACL. You didn't have anybody tear a shoulder. Like these guys stayed healthy. And I think that's huge, man, because you're going to need that. You're going to need that offensive line to stay healthy and have that continuity and that chemistry. And they're able to just work and build that. And I think John Mateer is going to be really, really good. But if he doesn't have anybody blocking for him up front and there's a turnstile of offensive linemen based on injury, because of injury, then it's going to be really hard for him to get comfortable and feel comfortable with what he's trying to do in the pocket if he's not sure who his left tackle is going to be. And
that's a fair point.
Being said, I think too deep, we've talked about it before, your too deep depth chart along the offensive line is so much better than what it was last year. I think everybody feels a lot more comfortable that, listen, if Jacob Sexton does have to sit out a series and you go to Michael Fasusi, who's not going to be fired up to see Michael Fasusi out there for a series? Everybody's going to be pumped. Like, you're going to be excited and everybody's going to be calling for it. Like, let's see more Michael Fasusi, because everybody's fired up about that. So I think just hearing some of the positive reports about the offensive line, again, there's give and take day after day. It's not always one side dominating the other, but the fact that those guys are holding their own against what we believe to be one of the best defensive lines in college football, I give that. I mean, that's where I got my A grade right now, is because the offensive line has been holding up.
And you made a good point there about the offensive linemen that were held out. So you got Heath Ozaida as well as Logan Howland, Jake Taylor. All of them were dealing with some sort of surgeries, cleanup surgery, it sound like, on the shoulders, just like Jaden Jackson was on defense. And so that means for you as a team that the Oklahoma Sooners have that two deep that you mentioned. You just need to get everybody back, into continued shape. And right now, Eddie Pierre-Louis is leading the way on at that left, that guard spot. But Heath Ozaida could come back and take that here in the summer and in fall camp. But as you mentioned, we've got a two deep of guys that have actually played football in the SEC or played a lot of snaps in general, on top of two true freshmen that you have zero fear of going out there on the field and playing. Because they came in the spring, they should be ready to go. Like, we would have saw more Eddie Pierre-Louis, they said, last year if he had came in the spring. If he didn't show up because he showed up in summer because, he couldn't graduate early at Tampa Catholic. They don't do early graduates. If he was able to get there in the spring, he probably would have played, John. We would have been able to see him playing a little bit of guard and helping out with some of the injured players. And he only didn't play because he didn't really know the playbook yet. But granted, I don't think anybody knew the playbook, so I don't think it would have mattered. We could have easily gotten away with it, but we did not do that to ourselves. So because of that, now we're actually in a situation, John, where we have a lot of dudes that know the book, know what needs to be done. I think it's going to lead to a very promising fall, which is exact same as you. I give that A, mainly because I'm hearing that there is a lot of continuity on this team as it's gone through every practice. Everything's, we dealt with two injuries that were slightly concerning. One with Eli Boeing and the ankle sprain, but that's an ankle sprain. It wasn't anything serious, wasn't anything broken, even though he was rolled up on. That's probably healed now, because we're at that point. It's probably healed now, and he'll be ready to go easily by fall camp. And in the Giovanni Gibson situation where his fibula was snapped because a teammate rolled onto him while he was blocking. Freak accident. Basically, a freak accident is what got us to where we got Jermichael Carter, which is honestly a very good pickup, a very good additional piece, a very up-and-coming potential. Because the good thing is, to me, at that spot at wide receiver, doesn't really matter where he came from. If you got the talent, it's going to shine. And if the coaches can put you in the position, you'll shine. So I like that, knock on wood, that the world hasn't fell apart on us yet.
No, and we just hope that everybody stays healthy through fall camp, and this team is relatively healthy when they open the season against Illinois State. Because, listen, they need a little bit of injury luck on their side. Last year, they had none of it. There was no injury luck, especially on the offensive side of the ball. This year, it comes back. It regresses to the mean, as they say in the statistical world. Can't get that word out. My apologies. Speaking of statistics, the Oklahoma Sooners won another conference championship on the softball diamond. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.